and they had people in them. So we were in trailers that they had converted into dorms, which was actually kind of cozy. So we were there in winter, and that was the year I didn't have a summer solstice because I flew down in July on the solstice. So I missed the summer solstice completely. I had 2 winter solstices in one year. But it wasn't, it's only at a latitude of negative 20 something, right? It's not super cold in the winter.
No.
So I had like a little space heater and a little electric blanket in my trailer dorm, and that was fine. But it was a little bit like camping. Not quite, more like glamping, I guess, because we did have, running water and all that stuff.
What time of year was it?
It was July. It was about two and a half weeks in July. I was out at the Karoo site, and I was in Cape Town for a few days before and after. So I didn't get to do a whole lot in Cape Town. I had like one day to run around and be like a tourist. And I've wanted to go back ever since. I just haven't been able to make it line up with any. Usually when I travel, it's for work because I don't have a whole lot of money to go running around the world and doing fun stuff like that, or time. So I try and line them up with work trips, and I haven't had any work trip line up with Cape Town again, sadly. But I'd love to come back because we saw so much at the Karoo site, but that was I didn't get to see so much of everything in between.
That's a pity.
So yeah. But it was such a difference in the data quality because the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, feels like the middle of nowhere, but it's not. You have, in our you have emergency bands, like the ambulances and police departments use the frequencies in that band. You have all the electronics that are on site from the other telescopes. You have, all the just static electricity from people walking around. I mean, it's just amazing how, quote unquote loud it is. Compared to the Karoo, the only things we saw were our own electronics. Okay, but we shielded that. And satellites. Like the rest of the band was clean and perfect and empty. It was just like such a difference.
Because that whole area is a protected area now in terms of electromagnetic, radio transmissions and so on. I think they're not even allowed to have TV transmissions in there.
That sounds about right. Yeah, and technically we have that in West Virginia, but it's a very small area, and it's a very old statute. There's been a lot of built up since then, but I think. Down at the SKA site, they're protecting that very, very strictly for that reason, just to keep that as pristine as possible. For the most part,
we've actually got activist groups campaigning to get the whole thing stopped because they want their TV and they want their they want all their infrastructure being built and.
Yeah, that's and that's a really difficult issue, right? How do you balance the needs of people already living there with this goal for this cool scientific project? That's a serious issue that you have to work with.
I find the arguments interesting. To me, just reading it, not living there, it seems like about 2/3 of their arguments are just utter nonsense. They're just coming up with whatever they can to pad it. But the rest of them are quite serious. These are real concerns, and you realize, wow, this is actually a bit of a problem that they're creating here.
That's
What do you do?
I don't know quite how to deal with that. I know that that's a problem that we as a astronomical scientific community are dealing with in a lot of spaces. Is that there's this history of encroaching on a space where people have lived and deciding this is our dark space or this is our radio quiet zone, without respecting the people that are already there, which is a serious concern because you can't just kick people off their land and be like, we have to do science now. So there needs to be a lot of discussion and respect. And unfortunately, I'm so far out of that project now that I don't know the status of where they are on that. And for Green Bank, it was, I don't know what the story was, but that was put in place 50, 60 years ago. And the population grew around it despite that. So yeah, they still have to have these discussions with local governments, on how strictly they enforce the bans and out to what radius and things like that. Yeah. What we could do, I mean, we could just build all our telescopes on the moon, which is crazy expensive. But at least no one lives there, right? We're not encroaching on anyone's, living space there. But that's a bit more radical, I think, than we're ready for.
It's a future we can dream for, yeah.
Yes, Antarctica. I guess there's no humans living in Antarctica. That's also really hard to get to.
Well, they've still got plenty of satellites, and it's the South Pole Base, or whatever it's called. I don't know the name.
Yep. I've never
Various
been.
bases scattered around on the coast.
Yeah, but I mean, other than the penguins, as long as you're not bothering the penguins, it's a whole different story. Yeah.
You managed to, on your own, cover every single question I had lined up. So
now
we can
I'm not even done though. That's just like one half of my research life.
Oh, well, please keep going.
Sure.
I'm interested.
I didn't want to ramble too much, so please interject or interrupt me wherever.
Sure.
Yeah, so after, so interestingly, so like I said earlier, I jumped into astronomy and decided I was going to be an astronomer, and I had no idea what being an astronomer entailed. And I liked astronomy, but I discovered through grad school that I liked teaching about astronomy even more. So I did my dissertation in this radio astronomy work, but I ended up getting a job after grad school with Pamela Gay at Cosmoquest, which was more of an education or science education and outreach position. So that's where I met you, like you said, or internet met you, I guess, or Skyped you before. Because what I did was a lot of the public outreach stuff for the Citizen Science Project Cosmoquest. So Cosmoquest has nothing to do with radio astronomy. It's there's a lot of planetary science. So we're getting citizen scientists to help characterize the surfaces of the moon, of asteroid Vesta, of I think Mars was added after I left. Mercury.
Yes, yeah.
So you're getting humans, people who are interested in science, helping to do the research, not just people who were crazy enough to slog through X years of grad school, like some of us. So I was doing more of the public outreach phase of that. I was developing lesson plans for middle school teachers to use alongside that. And I was doing research into so this is my first foray into education research, where it's like, what makes people want to volunteer their time to do this project with us? We are looking at that as looking at a group of people who do the citizen science and say, why are you doing that? And this is actually a fairly active topic of research, because we want to understand what gets people interested in citizen science, what gets them interested in trying it, and what gets them interested in sticking with it. Because sometimes it is a pretty repetitive task. And there are so many citizen science projects out there who are looking at ways of engaging their audiences better, and looking at ways of getting people involved in their research better. So I did that, and I'm still kind of finishing up that work in education. And so postdoc is typically around a 2 or 3 year limited time frame. So I started looking at teaching positions after that, because some of my time spent at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, near the end in particular, I was also teaching. I was teaching some intro physics labs, but I was also teaching science to elementary education majors. So the students who were studying to become the next generation of kindergarten through 5th grade teachers, teaching them all the science they need to know. So that was a really interesting experience working on that, because they had developed a curriculum there that was all hands-on and experiential. And so you're not so much trying to memorize this ridiculous list of facts as you are getting them to do the same kind of experiments that they'd have their students do with the same type of material. So cheap stuff that they can get access to as a teacher. Or in particular, they have a resource center there that local teachers can use. So we used all the stuff from the resource center that they could borrow when they go on to their career. And so that, interestingly enough, got me on the radar for this job at St. Anselm College, because the position was, so I was applied to like all of these teaching positions all over the U.S. and some outside the U.S. I just went nuts with this huge list of applications because I was like, I need a job. Funding's running out. I like to teach. Here are all the jobs that involve teaching. And St. A's came up, and my supervisor at the STEM center was like, you would be really good for this position. And I'm like, no, it doesn't look, I don't think. She's like, no, you'll be good for this position. You should apply. So, tip for all you listening out there, if there's a job that you're not sure if you're qualified for, apply anyway. They may surprise you and pick you as their first choice. So I applied for this job because it was a position in the physics department, but it was also backed by the education department because they were specifically looking for someone who could teach physics to undergrads, do research with undergrads, and also teach education majors the science they need to know to go out and teach kindergarten through 5th grade science. And that's what I was getting, experience in. So I ended up, and someone who would also be doing science education research. So the stuff I started doing with Cosmoquest was what they were looking for. Right. So I went on a bunch of interviews, and St. A's was my favorite for several reasons. One is the campus was a lot like the place where I went to school as an undergrad, so it felt very familiar, and that it was a small liberal arts school. Everybody there was super awesome. It was a really great opportunity as a tenure track professorship. And location-wise, it was back on this side of the country where my family lives, or at least my mom lives now.
That's nice, yeah.
Have gone off. My brothers have gone off and scattered now. So for a lot of, and my partner's family lives here too. So he somewhere in the mix. My partner moved in with me, and he got dragged from Philly out to Illinois, and then from Illinois got dragged to New Hampshire, and he's just been following my ridiculousness, which I'm super grateful for. And so I ended up getting offered that position and taking it immediately because I was super excited about it. So now they don't have joint appointments. I'm just appointed by the physics department, but I have a close relationship with the education department too. And they're all super awesome. And so what I'm doing now is I'm teaching a lot. I teach 3 classes a semester. Usually one of those classes is a lab, which for some reason takes me 20 times as long to grade as anything else that I do. I don't know why grading labs takes so long. But I'm, every semester, it's funny, the dean asked me recently, what teaching goals, I know what your research goals are, but what are your teaching goals? I'm like, I have no shortage of those. Every semester I'm either teaching a course that's new to me, or I'm redesigning the course because I didn't like how it went last time, or, just something bizarre like that. So I've been teaching intro astronomy. I'm teaching an online course for St. Anselm right now in intro astronomy. I created a astronomy minor, I'm the first astronomer there. Yay! Although, the other physics professors like astronomy too, so they would teach it occasionally, but they didn't have someone who actually had like a full graduate school background in it. So I'm creating these other courses. I'm going to have an astrophysics course I'm going to be creating. And then I teach our physics majors, our physics classes. Like I'm doing modern physics next semester, which is super fun because this is when you get to teach them relativity, when everything gets really weird, and quantum physics, when everything gets even weirder. So we're taking them out of intro physics, where everything is nice and makes sense and is classical and has Newton's laws and circuit laws. Now I'm throwing them into quantum and relativity. So
modern physics was my least favorite, so I gotta say.
Really? I loved it. I still don't understand
conceptually,
it.
I loved it.
Yes.
It was so interesting, but somehow maths was never my strong point, and that is so maths, right?
Yes. To be honest, I'm not, I used to be really good at math. I got a math minor in college. Nowadays, I look at it and I'm like, how did I do that? Because I didn't do as much when I went into doing research full time. I